Welcome, advocates, to another episode of the Leading Equity Podcast, a podcast that focuses on supporting educators with the tools and resources necessary to ensure equity at their schools. Today's special guest is Weston Sprott. So without further ado, Weston, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Pleasure is all mine. I'm excited for today's conversation. But before we get into today's topic, I'd love for you to share a little bit about yourself and what you currently do.
My name is Weston Sprott. As you mentioned, I am Dean and Director of the Preparatory Division at the Juilliard School. At the Preparatory Division, we have two departments. One is the pre-college and another is the Music Advancement Program. And basically what we do is we provide a conservatory-style education to students between the ages of 8 to 18. So the pre-college has about 300 students. It's a global program. Students come from literally all over the world, so they can come here and work with the world's finest teachers. And the Music Advancement Program is very much a local New York City program. Students from the New York City tri-state area. We currently have 87 students in that program. Also get a conservatory-style education. These students are in our building every Saturday from 8:30 in the morning, oftentimes till 6, 7 o'clock at night, doing private lessons, music theory and ear training, playing in orchestra, wind ensemble, singing in choruses, studio classes, you name it. All the things that a student who is majoring in music in college would do. These students are packing all of that education into 30 Saturdays over the course of the year. The Music Advancement Program has a very specific focus on students who are historically underserved and underrepresented in classical music. And as of a couple of years ago, we've been able to make that program completely tuition-free in perpetuity. So we're very proud of the fact that we have a lot of students who have been historically underserved be able to come to what I believe is the world's greatest institution for learning and the performing arts for free, forever. It's an amazing thing. So I've been in this role as Dean and Director for the last 5 years. I've been on the faculty here since 2008, and it's been one of the great joys of my life. And in other parts of my life, I'm one of the co-founders and steering committee members of the Black Orchestral Network, which is an organization that is geared towards cultivating community, telling our stories and lifting our voices in the Black community for Black orchestral musicians. And here at Lincoln Center across the street, I'm also a trombonist in the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra, where I've been for the last 19 years. So that's a brief summary of what I've been up to.
That's a lot. Good stuff. Well, I'm excited to hear about that. And I have so many questions just from your introduction. I mean, first part is I want to make sure I understand what conservatory means. So could you give us a little bit more context when you say that we're a conservatory program?
Sure. A conservatory in the context of music is something that's very hyper-focused on this particular craft. I don't know if I would go so far as to call it a trade school, but that's kind of a way you would think about it. It's not, a conservatory is not based in an education that has extraordinary breadth. Of course, students who come to a liberal art, to a conservatory for their education, a place like the Juilliard School, they are taking core academic classes. They're learning about reading comprehension and writing, liberal arts, all these things, but they have an extreme focus on their artistic pursuit. So that's the way that we've traditionally thought of conservatories.
Gotcha. Okay. And you say you played the trombone. Are you familiar with the Bilal brothers? Because I've been watching them on YouTube a lot, and their trombone skills are just amazing.
Yeah, they're fantastic. It's amazing.
Yeah. All right. So let's start here, because you said that you have been, predominantly serving historically marginalized students. And now you're at a place where you are able to create tuition-free spaces for them to be able to participate in this program. I'm just curious, let's start with what are some of the trends maybe that you're seeing when it comes to maybe interests, maybe is the word I want to say, of our students, our BIPOC students, for example, into the performing arts?
I think the interest is really high. The challenge is trying to remove as many of the barriers to entry as possible. So a really interesting thing for us is that, as I mentioned just a couple of years ago, we were able to become tuition free, which of course means that prior to that, we were not. Prior to that, we had a highly subsidized tuition that we charged in Music Advancement Program, and we gave very robust financial aid so that we wouldn't have to decline any students who really deserved the opportunity to be here. But even still, there's something really significant about the messaging. I'm just imagining a family sitting around their kitchen table thinking about, is pursuing the arts something that we want to do? And it may be something that they want to do, but when they see the price tag that's attached to it and the various barriers to entry, We need to take private lessons so that my child can prepare for this audition. We have to buy an instrument. We have to travel, all of those things. Every one of those things stacks up and oftentimes is a reason for a young person or that young person's family to decide, you know what, maybe this isn't the right thing for us to do. Even if those things aren't necessarily true from our perspective, if we're able to provide that type of support, someone clicks on the website, they see that it costs X number of thousands of dollars, and they just immediately go, close, no, thank you, that's not for me, right? So us being able to shift to a tuition-free model was really significant. And what we've seen over the last couple of years already is that our applicant pool has increased by about 160%.
Wow.
Granted, part of that is we're advertising and we're trying to engage with the community. We're very intentional about the way that we go about our recruitment. But I am sure that the fact that our program provides these opportunities to students for free is making a huge difference. And so when people realize that that barrier has been knocked down, it's really clear that the interest is there. There's no shortage of people who want the opportunity to provide a great chance for their young people to be able to do something that's fun, that challenges them, that teaches them how to solve difficult problems and teach them to be able to express themselves. Who wouldn't want that?
I agree. I think sometimes what happens is a lot of folks, especially folks who think, oh, Juilliard, they hear the name. And like you said, they assume I can't afford it. But they may not even look to see if it's even possible because of just assuming there's going to be barriers in front. For my students that are coming from a limited income background, what are some of the things that you're doing to, because again, the interest obviously sounds like it's there, right? And then now as you've been able to knock down some of those barriers, things are starting to change. You say you've been very intentional with your recruiting practices. What are some of the things that you're doing to reach some of those tougher populations?
So one of the first things I'll address, and I'll answer your question about recruitment, is that we recognize that our name brand, Juilliard, it has incredible social capital. People attach that name to extreme quality, and that's a double-edged sword. On one hand, that is what we do. We thrive on artistic excellence, but at the same time, we aim to be accessible, and we don't want a student before they even try. That's not for me. It costs too much. There's no way I would be good enough to do that. And so we are trying to put forward a face that says, hey, look, we are accessible, we're open. Juilliard is a place where a student like you should be and should aspire to be. And if you put forth some effort, we can create pathways for you to have an opportunity to be here. And so what does that look like as far as recruitment? One thing is just very much grassroots efforts. Me, members of my staff, members of our faculty, going out to various schools, creative youth development programs across New York City, just being present, going to listen to their rehearsals, sitting down, playing side by side in the orchestra and the bands with those programs, talking about what we do, passing out flyers, letting them know that Juilliard is not just a name on a building, but these are real people who are nice and warm and welcoming, and that we want to be supportive to them. And then when we do our own recruitment events, we reach out to those other programs that we know, because we're not the only program in New York City that is trying to do good work for underserved communities. So we want to be a good team player. And so we reach out to those programs and say, hey, we're doing a recruitment event. We would love for you to be here also. This isn't just going to be an open house for us. Let's do it as an open house for 10 or 15 programs all across New York City, so that young people and their families can come here to Juilliard. They can learn all about Juilliard, but they can also leave knowing about 10 or 15 other programs in New York City, so that if Juilliard turns out not to be the place for them this year, they know there's somewhere else that they can go as well and continue their education and find a community. They can find their people.
Okay. All that makes sense. And again, thank you for the work that's being done. I know this is obviously very important to you. I want to shift gears just a little bit, because I think some of the barriers that we discussed a lot of them were kind of maybe financial barriers. So maybe they don't have access to funding for an instrument, or maybe they don't have access or feel they don't have access to enter in a program such as a Juilliard. For my folks that are performing arts teachers, directors within their high schools or their middle schools, maybe you could give a few strategies for those who might see some barriers at their level, and maybe some practices that you could or tips that you can give for those who are trying to develop their programs a little bit more locally.
I think one thing is to try to connect with the various other programs that are out there. A lot of times we try to do something alone. We don't realize that there are resources sometimes right in front of us. And granted, sometimes those resources are few and far between. There are still a lot of programs out here that are doing real significant work. And so try your best to connect your students with those programs, find ways to bring those supports in, and continue to lobby for additional support across the city from the city government. I think we're in a position now where I believe that our local officials are reinvigorated to have a discussion about bringing arts education back. And so finding a way to lean into that, also thinking about how you want to advocate to the leadership within your school and within your district about wanting to support the arts. I think we have a shortage of music educators. So that's one thing I would think about in higher ed. And that seems to be something that affects us pretty dramatically on the East Coast, is making sure that higher ed is actually investing in and putting out enough high quality music educators so that we can fill these positions.
When I was a school principal, we had a music teacher position, but we weren't able to offer it full time. So I know that when you're offering a part-time position to run the band program, for example, is what we were trying to get someone to do, was to do the band, but we couldn't offer it full time. And
Right.
So it was hard for us to recruit teachers or a teacher capable of running our band program. Are you seeing across the board, is that typical that the jobs are part-time that are offered, or are there a lot of full-time positions that are available out there?
I'm not sure. I don't work in the public schools, even though we intersect with the public schools
Sure.
quite a bit. And so I have conversations from time to time with New York City Department of Education and public schools and public school teachers. And that's my understanding, is that sometimes there's what you're saying. There's a lack of full-time positions, but that doesn't mean there's a lack of an opportunity to have someone who is working in the arts. And there are also a lot of programs that send teachers part-time to public schools to help develop the artistic programming at their schools as well.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is funding might be a challenge. There also might be recruitment as a challenge as far as getting teachers, qualified staff within these positions. It sounds like you said that more of just exposing students to instruments, maybe. What about careers? I mean, are there, besides maybe being a music teacher or a band teacher, what kind of careers are available that we're kind of teaching our students, hey, enter into the performing arts programs because you can make money in this area or that area? What kind of things are out there for us?
There are tons of people who are making careers in the arts in all different ways. One of the ways that I make my career is by playing in an orchestra. People are performing artists playing in orchestras, chamber ensembles, as soloists, playing in jazz groups. People are freelance musicians. If you think, especially in a place like New York City, on any given night, all the different venues that are filled with artists, people singing, playing instruments, dancing, acting, all these things, it's actually an enormous economy, right? But the other thing I think about is that the reason for getting an arts education or basing yourself in the arts is not primarily about getting a job. It's about what it actually can do for you as a person, how you learn, how you think, how you interact with other people. Playing in an ensemble is like a metaphor for democracy, understanding how to work with others, knowing what your role is when it's time for you to step forward, when it's time for you to step back, when it's time for you to not play at all, when it's time to play loud, play soft, all those things. It's a metaphor for the way that we want to be. And so in our programs here at Juilliard, for these students between the ages of 8 and 18, when these students graduate high school, half of them go on to major in music in college and half of them don't. And we consider both of those things to be a success. So another analogy, when I was growing up, I played in the band and the orchestra. I also played on the basketball team. And just think about how much we encourage young people to play sports. We think there's so many transferable skills and characteristics that you gain from playing sports. But we don't ask our young people to all play sports because the end goal is that they will be in the NBA or the NFL. It's because we understand there's a whole lot of things they gain from having had that experience. And there are a lot of similarities, and there are also some unique differences, I think, as well, from having an arts education.
Okay. Well, okay. So for that level, like the pre-college level, it's more of developing the skills to maybe, like you said, know when to play loud, know when to play soft, from a metaphorical standpoint,
Right.
Interacting with other folks. So in essence, what I'm hearing is that these pre-college programs, for example, Juilliard's pre-college program is a great preparational program for students that are looking to move into higher education or just enter into the workforce afterwards?
Yeah, I think they're great skills for life, regardless of what you choose to do. If you want to be a musician, you want to be a doctor, you want to be a politician, anything in between, the skills that you develop learning how to be an artist are really important. You know, playing these instruments, it's not an easy thing to do. Anyone who's ever tried to play an instrument at a high level knows that's not a simple task. And one of the things that I tell our parents, yes, you get to go to a concert and you get to see your students on stage and they make this beautiful product and it brings a smile to your face and everyone claps when it's over, and that's great. But one of the real things that your student learned is they learned, I know how to do difficult things. If I put my mind to something, I can take this piece of metal or this string instrument, and I can make something beautiful of it. Something that is not just utilitarian, but something that's artistic and beautiful and that other people will appreciate. And if I learn how to take those skills and then do that in the context of working with other people, that only gets amplified. And I think a lot of young people, they learn very quickly how transferable those skills are, because I'm a firm believer that if you can do this well, a lot of other things start feeling very, very easy. There's a lot of personal achievement in going through an education like this.
What kind of things seem easier? Give me some examples.
I'll give you an example. You know, being dean and director at Juilliard was my first full-time administrative job. And on one hand, I believed that before I started that I was going to be able to do this. And on the other side of that, there's a little voice on my shoulder that was saying, you know what, you don't really have a ton of experience doing this. You may be walking into something that you're not going to be very, very good at. But one of my mentors told me, he said, learning to play your instrument the way that you did, nothing you ever do will be as difficult as that. And that has turned out to be true. And I'm not suggesting that the job that I have is easy, because it's not. However, when I think about difficult times or things are coming up and I compare that, the personal private struggle that you have learning to make something great come out of an instrument, very few things compare to that. It gives you a perspective, and you have this experience of putting an extremely difficult piece of music in front of you on a stand and being able to chip away at it incrementally, bit by bit, over the course of 6 months until you're actually able to make it work. You learn how to scaffold these problems. It's all transferable.
I wonder if another skill set that you're able to develop is just maybe like your social presence, maybe, because if you're in an orchestra, even if you're in an orchestra, whether you have a solo part or whatever it is, you're on stage in front of a lot of people often.
That's right.
Does that help develop those skills to maybe be more social, more outgoing, or just more comfortable in large groups? I mean, what are your thoughts there?
Oh, I think so. If you're an orchestra, or in our program, students play in large ensembles, they also play in small ensembles. They also have to play solo recitals. Having to walk out on stage by yourself, or just by yourself and with a piano, and hold the floor for 30, 45 minutes or an hour is an incredible challenge. And just think about how many people have this fear or anxiety of public speaking, or being able to stand on stage and be able to do something. When you start having that experience for the first time, when you're 10, 12, 15 years old, and that's a regular thing for you, you're going to walk out, there's going to be 100 people there, you stand there by yourself and you deliver something that you've prepared. That sets you up for life in a significant way. Stand up, explain to people what you're about to play, why it's important to you, and then demonstrate for us what you've learned. Or go in a room with these 3 other people who are about your age, and you all learn together how to make this difficult piece of music come to life. You are not holding up your end of the bargain today. How are you going to internally deal with that? You notice something that one of your classmates is doing that you think if they did a little bit differently, the whole product would be better. How are you going to navigate figuring out the right way to say that to that person so that you all, at the end of the day, can be better, but also still want to work together? Those are things that many adults struggle with, being able to figure out those dynamics right now.
Brother, you are bringing the fire. I got you pumped up on that part there.
It's just the truth. It's just the truth. It is, and I have the experience of being able to see young people do this every single week, and it's magic. Oftentimes we put the microphone in front of our kids and we have them speak about what they're working on, what they're doing, why they're excited about a piece that they're working on. Tell us about a project that you put together. And they speak more eloquently and thoughtfully than most adults would. It's incredible. It's a great source of pride. Oftentimes we think about talking about our programs. I always think that some of the best spokespeople for what we do are the students and their parents, not us.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And my mind is just going about how this can create teamwork, confidence, self-worth. It could break down, like you said, a lot of barriers. It's helpful. Now, do the students get a grade at the end of their time?
Yeah, so our program, like I said, is very much structured similar to the way that a college curriculum would be. Granted, we're doing it just over the course of a Saturday, 30 Saturdays a year. But our students go through a very thoughtfully crafted schedule. So they're taking a private lesson for an hour. They're taking a 1 hour class on music theory or ear training. In each one of those classes they're attending, they're getting a grade for it. We take this very seriously. One of the sayings that people on my staff have heard me say far too many times is that music is fun, but it's not all fun and games. We want you to have a good time, but we also want you to know this is a place that has rigor, and we want you to be able to learn how to play and do this seriously. And the better you get at it, and the more seriously you take it, the more fun you're going to have, because it's good to be able to do the thing. But yeah, students get grades every semester, and we have all the traditional things you would think about, like academic probation and warnings and stuff like that, because we want to keep our students, we want to keep them thriving artistically and socially, all those things, behaving well, being good citizens to the community, and also progressing on their instruments.
All right, well, that's good. We're holding them accountable. This is not just you're chosen or selected amongst however many applicants that are coming in your way, and we appreciate you putting in your best effort. Bottom line.
Yeah. We have a very community focused way of doing things. So we're definitely not the people where it's like, hey, you struggled in music theory class this semester, so you're out. We try to identify the students who are having a struggle in a class here or there and provide them with all the various resources we possibly can so they succeed, and give them as many chances as we possibly can. And the turnover rate that we have in our program is extraordinarily low. The vast majority of students who start in this program finish the program. They finished it successfully, and they're happy, and their families are happy, and it's the greatest thing.
There it is. All right. So if we have some folks that do they have to be in the New York area? I think you said that they can be globally. What are the stipulations, I guess, or requirements in order to enter or apply to the program?
Yeah, the Music Advancement Program is a program specifically for students in the New York City tri-state area. So we have students from New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. The Juilliard Pre-College is a global program. We have kids from literally all over the world. 37% of the students in our program actually have international passports, if you can believe it. We have some students who move here just so they can participate in our programs. So as far as what's required to enter, we are an audition program. We have auditions every May for entrance starting in the fall of following year. So just here in a few weeks, we're going to be having auditions for students who want to join us in September. And if you go to our website, you can quickly find what all the various audition requirements are for each particular instrument. Every instrument has different requirements, and we'll be doing that whole process here just in the next month or so.
Sounds good. Well, I'll tell you this, Weston, I've learned a lot, and I never thought or considered how developing skills, play an instrument, can relate to your relationships, professionalism, personal, all these things that can relate in that skill set. I'd love for you to share with us any final words of advice to our listeners.
Sure. I think especially when you're working with young people, which is something I view for myself as just a privilege to be able to do. As much as you're able, give everything that you can. You have to reserve just a little bit so you can protect yourself and your own mental and physical health and well-being, but give everything that you can. And also, one of my favorite sayings, Clarence B. Jones, who was here at Juilliard just a handful of years ago, he was actually a clarinet student many years ago in the Preparatory Division and went on to be a speechwriter for Dr. Martin Luther King. He spoke about how what he learned here helped him to be able to write better for Dr. King, to be able to think about the musical cadence in speech. But one of the things that he shared with our community that I thought was incredibly powerful and has stuck with me for the last several years is that you have to love the people you serve. So when you think about the people who are your peers as teachers or members of the staff, your students, their families, love the people that you serve. The more and more you do that, the better you will be guided, the better your work will be, and the more people will be be down to work with you.
There it is. One more time, give us the website, and if there's any social media that you want to shout out, go ahead and take some time to do that. How can folks reach you online?
Just visit juilliard.edu and then look for the Preparatory Division. You'll find it right there on the homepage.
There it is. Weston, it's truly been a pleasure. I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.